Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the franchising industry and talk through topics that are often pitfalls and challenges. We want to help you guys avoid those things with actionable advice. And today I've got a special guest with me, Shannon Wilburn. You might know her if you were at the
Hello.
AFC at IFA. You sure know her. But Shannon, I want to tell them a little bit about you,
Okay.
and I just want to say thanks for making time to be on the show with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I always tell people if you can't talk about your business, then no one's going to get to know you. So I love the opportunity to talk about my business.
Yeah, and well, you've had great experience too. So if you don't know Shannon, you haven't had the pleasure, guys. She was the co-founder and the CEO of Just Between Friends. She had a cool and successful exit and a great transition recently, and now she's the CEO and founder of the Shine Executive Coaching Group. Uh, you can imagine what she does, right? She's learned a ton in that whole process. She can coach. She coaches emerging and growing franchise brands. She's founded some groups. She's actually got a cool program starting in April, so good timing for this episode,
Yep.
where you're going to be launching what's called the Franchisor Founder Growth Collective.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Shannon, if you don't mind, and then about that group and kind of what you're working on. Then we'll jump right into the topic today.
Yeah. I would call myself a serial entrepreneur. So the Shine Executive Coaching business is my fourth real business. I had some startups when I was like in high school and college that were just little things that I really don't think I recognized as shaping me into the person I am. But yeah, started just between friends. Tulsa. I live in Oklahoma in
Oh,
1997 with a business partner. 2003, we franchised the concept. If you don't know what the concept is, it's basically a marketplace for families to buy and sell gently used children's and maternity clothes, toys, and baby equipment. And so we were doing that successfully in Tulsa. We decided to franchise it in 2003. There's a whole story there. And ran that company since 2003 and had a successful exit from the brand in December of 22.
mhm.
So I was in the franchising space for a really long time, had a great run, loved it. I still love the franchising community. And now I have ventured into the executive coaching business. And then I have another small business that I started in 2018 that has nothing to do with franchising. I call it my hobby business. It's just a little small business that I run out of the house. And yeah, so I can't get enough.
I love it. Well, I'm likewise kind of a glutton for punishment. I mentioned we bought a franchise last summer.
Yeah.
I've started and run a bunch of businesses from the house over the years, and it's been a blast. But I just can't get it. I can't stop scratching the
Yeah,
itch.
when you get the entrepreneurial bug, I didn't know that the bug had me, but it does.
Yeah, you take a step back and look at your life, like, oh, I've been infected for a long time, right?
Yes, yep.
That's funny. Well, so we're talking to the right crowd today, right? Because we're the people that listen are, you guys are all you're entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs trying to franchise in franchising. So let's talk a little bit about the topic today, which is there are a lot of challenges right now. You're privileged in a position where you're leading a lot of coaching and mentoring groups in franchising with
Yep.
founders and executives. So you get to hear what's happening in the market, and money issues is a big challenge right now.
Right.
So, and again, guys, money issues can range anything from my company isn't set up right with the proper royalty structure, so I'm not royalty independent. I'm dependent upon franchise fees to I want to get started. I don't have any idea how much money I need to do this properly. So, Shannon, I'm excited to jump into this with you. Do you mind? You had money issues, right? Like that's
Oh
why I love
yeah.
having you on here. Would you share like some real stuff about
Yeah.
life? And let's
Yeah,
make sure people feel
absolutely.
comfortable about this.
Yeah. And I'm an open book, so probably too transparent at times. So ask me anything. Yeah, when we started first off, my degree is elementary education. So I did not have the business background or training to know what a fully funded business startup should look like. We just started doing it. And when we started the Just Between Friends business in 1997, I didn't know that you needed to, have cash flow. I didn't even know what that meant, to be quite honest. So my business partner and I, we took out a home equity line of credit based on my home And that's what we started the business with in 1997. I think the HELOC was for $15,000.
Mhm.
And back then, to me, $15,000 was this astronomical amount of money. I
Yeah.
don't remember how much equity we had in our home, but our home only cost $100,000. So it could, it's like that was a lot of money to me.
Mhm.
And so we started that just, using it, then paying it back, using it, then paying it back. And after the events, so thankfully the events were profitable and we could put money back in. So when we started franchising in 2003, we bootstrapped. Again, I
Mhm.
did not know that you could ask friends and family for money. I didn't know there were investors out there without this business training. I was just like, well, I guess we have to fund it.
Uh-huh.
And so we borrowed from the profits. At that time, our business was doing well. And so we had cash flow, we had profitability that we could take from that business and put into starting the franchise system. But it wasn't near enough. And I think we were the first to market in our industry, in the children's consignment industry.
Mhm.
And I really think that because we weren't fully funded, um, th I think if we would have been fully funded and could just go at it hard, we probably would not have had some of the mistakes that we have made in the past. So, um, yeah.
Yeah.
What does fully funded look like? That's the question.
Right. Well, and how do they know, right? So, I mean, many people are in the same boat as you. They've worked their guts out. They've built a successful business, and they realize this actually has legs. I could franchise this,
Yeah,
and so they pay for an FDD and they build operations manuals, and then like I'm ready to franchise, right? But before even that stage, when they get the idea, a lot of folks have no idea what it's going to cost to get ready to franchise, and then what it's going to cost to successfully launch a franchise. So,
right. And
what?
I didn't have that
Mm-mm.
knowledge either. And honestly, I don't know that I truly have the knowledge because I haven't started a franchise myself recently, but I can tell you what is being said in the emerging franchisor boot camps that I'm going to and the emerging franchisor conference that the International Franchise Association puts on is when they have speakers that get general session stage time, they're saying upwards of $1 million.
Wow. Yeah,
And
and
they want you to have that money, number one. So, because if you run out of money, you're dead in the water.
yeah,
And I think also something that emerging brands maybe don't know, because I didn't know this either, is that you don't want to use your franchise fees as operating capital because it is, you
yeah,
know, you're probably going to use that for brokers. You're going to use that to get them off the ground. And then they may not, lots of businesses have a ramp up of getting customers. And so
oh, yeah,
maybe what you're expecting in royalties in year 2 or 3, it's not coming in those first few months. And some FDDs, some franchisees say you don't have to pay royalties for the first 6 months. I mean, they put things in there that really kind of tie their hands, but they might be doing it to compete, or I don't know. I feel like I'm getting off track, but
no, no, you're spot. I mean, if you don't mind, so
yeah,
I want to make sure we reiterate a few things you've said, and
yeah,
we need to come back to them too.
okay,
There's a reason why experts are saying you need a lot of money, but it's not that you need to have a pile of $1 million of cash in a briefcase under your bed, right?
right,
This $1 million, like it can be in a lot of different forms, but you need to have maybe lines of credit. Maybe careful with the credit card idea. A lot of people love to float things on that, but you need to
right,
have available credit and you need to have cash to
yeah,
invest in the business and even cash flows that can be invested in the business that can equal up to that amount. And
yes,
you don't need it on day one, right? You
no,
just need access to it. And let's can we talk about why? Like,
yeah,
because a new brand is like, well, to franchise is going to cost you six figures, right? Generally
right,
speaking, you got to have an
yeah,
attorney to write an FDD. You got to have a legit operations manual. If someone's selling you a package for less than that, like be wary if they're going to do it for you because they're probably copying and pasting a lot. And I've seen a lot of that really blow up in people's
okay.
faces.
And I don't know that costs like $100,000. I'm just like, holy cow, that's a lot of money. I'm
Yep.
like, I think what some of my friends are paying is around $20,000 to get their no, between $30,000 and $40,000 to get their FDD done.
Right.
And the operations manual, I mean, to me, I have not bid this in a long time, but I'm like, I don't think it's $60,000 to write your operations manual, but
Mhm.
yeah. So you're probably getting really close to that six figures initially.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also
I
the coaching and the setup and the learning,
yes.
and the training. Like a lot, if a lot of the groups that I know that do this well, like they're like, we're not just going to give you a book and say good luck and take your
Yeah.
money. We're going to say, here's your book, here's how you use it. Here's your
Yeah.
operations manual. This is how we built it. This is what you need to do. Here's your training program. Like, so they're a little more
Yeah.
hands-on.
Okay, good. And
Yeah,
maybe give them some marketing stuff. Can I back up a little bit?
of course you can. Yeah.
Um, when I was looking at exiting just between friends, and I was praying about like, what do I want to do next? What do I want to become a CEO of another brand? Do I want to buy a franchise? What do I want to do? And I landed on coaching. When I started working with a digital marketing agency in September of last year, and they said, "Who's your ideal client?" I was like, man, I don't know. I need to figure this out. I need to figure out who my ideal client was. And what I landed on was a six-figure business owner who wants to be a seven-figure business owner. But
Mhm.
it could also be a low seven-figure business owner that wants to grow to
Mhm.
eight figures. I mean, I feel like business is business. But why I chose that group was because I see so many people stepping into the franchise business
Mhm.
that should not be stepping into the franchise business yet. And
Yeah.
um, and I want to get them before they franchise. And I want to get them before they spend $100,000 and then they can't sell their franchise.
Yeah.
Um, I want to get them to help them like come along, be their guide, come alongside them, be their guide, and look at their finances. Do they have the capital to do this? Is their one location cash flowing?
Mhm.
Do they have a second location? Do they even have a third location for proof of concept? Because
Yeah.
I mean, how difficult it is for um, an amazing concept that has great profitability. If they don't have a second or third location when they go to market, so to speak, when they go and enter the franchising space,
Mhm.
the credibility is diminished because David Barr says franchising is the licensing of a business model that produces predictable cash flows
Mhm.
to an average franchisee with average intelligence, with average work ethic on an average day.
Yeah. In an average market, right?
In an average market,
Right.
exactly. In an average market. And they're unicorns. I mean, they're to find the right people for your brand. It's very difficult. And you're competing with there's 4,000 brands domestically, I think is the latest data that I've heard. And there's 300 to 500 emerging brands entering the space every year.
Mhm.
And that's who you're competing with. And so if you can show proof of concept that it worked well for you, if you're the founder, and it worked well for your friend who opened up an hour and a half west of you, and it
Yeah.
and it worked for someone who opened an hour and a half south of you, then it's so much easier because it's not necessarily the founder saying, yes, we're awesome. They
Mhm.
can call Joe, who's west of you, and Sally, who's south of you, and say, how is this working out for you? But I think it's a temptation to jump into franchising because you have something that's cash flowing for yourself, but you're not counting the cost of, okay, well, I need to take at least 10% off of the net profit be- because that's going to then come to the franchisor. And is there enough net profit left
Yeah.
to to give someone a full-time income. And if you read, sorry, I'm getting heated about this. Sorry.
This is good. This is what people need to know, though. So carry on, Shannon.
Yeah.
You're on the right track.
So if you read The Wealthy Franchisee, that's a new book that Scott Greenberg wrote, I think last year or year before. He talks about, I think they did some type of study, and I may not remember it correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong if you know this, but I think this study was done like 7 or 8 years ago, and the average franchisee expects to make $75,000 a year. And he said, so, if you're reading this, 8 years from now, it's probably 90,000. So can your concept, your model, whatever you're selling, if it's a 3-pack, like if you have a location that only spits out $30,000 in net profit for the owner, are you selling a 3-pack then that becomes the model for one person? And so looking at those types of things, it's not that if you have something that's only spending out $30,000, you can't franchise it, but think about the end user in mind. What is going to be, and we did not do that. These are things I can talk about now with 20 years of franchising experience, but I look back and I'm like, holy cow, we shouldn't have franchised. I'm like, wow, we had proven the concept. We had 10 just between friends in 5 different states. But that was not strategic. It was just, I didn't know any better. I mean, it was like we were letting people use our name without franchising. It was all
Oh,
kinds of
wow.
wrong that we had
Oh,
to
wow.
go back and correct. But I've seen, honestly, back to the Shine Executive Coaching, why I chose the six-figure entrepreneur who wants to be a 7-figure entrepreneur is I want to help them before they make the decision to franchise. Like, are you ready mentally? Because you're getting out of the business you're in, which maybe it's dog sitting.
Yeah,
And
totally different
you're
business.
getting into the business of franchising, which is a completely different business. And I didn't know that. No one told me that. And so I'm over here trying to run my corporate location, trying to be a franchisor, didn't really have the knowledge base to support that. And I realized, oh, we're just going to give people a way to make money like we're doing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's a much bigger feat. Your goal is supporting your franchisees, having a laser focus on their profitability and their satisfaction. I mean, you hope. I was in an advisory board meeting this last week and we were talking about franchise satisfaction. And of course, you want them to be highly satisfied, like you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not going to be highly satisfied. They're
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be mad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but and that's a different topic. But like that's all about relationship, right? Because
Yeah.
franchise happiness does this, and there's no
Yes.
way around it. There's a funny chart that actually I think nails it, where it's like happy, 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 hate you, you're the worst. Happy, 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 and it's like, and it's true. It's true. Almost any
You
brand, no
can
matter
send
how
that to
good they
me.
are.
If you can send that to me, I would be
Yeah,
appreciative.
I'll send that to you.
Okay,
But
good.
you're bringing up some important points that are just right in line with what we're talking about today, which is money issues, right? Because if you're not forecasting, if you're not planning, and it takes you, so let's use some hypotheticals, but let's
Yeah.
say as a franchisor, to get a franchisee off the ground,
Yep.
right? They owe you a franchise fee. Let's call that
Yep.
30 grand, 35 grand, whatever. But they're going to have to invest $50,000 to be able to then generate by the end of the first 12 months $30,000 of cash flow. And then
Yep.
year 2, though, they're going to generate $50,000 of cash flow.
We hope.
We hope, right? Like, is that generating enough money for you as the franchisor to support that franchise unit, right? So if they're only producing $50,000 and paying, let's say 10% royalties, they're
Yep.
producing $5,000 of revenue a year for you as the franchisor,
That's not enough.
about $400 a month.
Not enough. So I'm going to tell you again, learn from my mistakes. We want to learn from the mistakes of others. We don't want to be the others. Well, I
Yeah.
have been the others multiple times. So, man, when when we started franchising, so our royalty for Just Between Friends is probably the lowest. You're going to laugh when I tell you what it is.
I'm ready.
3%.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's
I'm like, how
abnormally
did,
low, you know? Yeah.
I'm like, people are like, how did you choose that? I was like, well, just pulled it out of thin air.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I didn't want it
And
to be too expensive for people,
yeah,
right?
I wanted to make sure it was affordable for them. I was so nice.
Hmm.
So it's 3%. It's still 3%.
Yeah.
But what we found way later, probably, Dave, than we should have found is that, we have 150 locations. Um, there are, you've got the top 25%, of course, that are killing it,
Hmm.
and those that are about to be killing it. And then you have some that they want to get to the top 50%, but it's taking them longer. Maybe they've had some life issues happen. Maybe they're not focusing on their business because that happens.
Yep.
Maybe it's harder than they thought it was going to be. They ran out of money. I mean, all the different issues to put you in that,
Yeah.
that below 50%. And then you have either in the bottom 25%, the bottom quartile, you have newbies that are
Mhm.
just starting.
Right.
And then you have people who are holding on to their franchise because it's part of their identity, maybe.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
not they're not seeing huge success, but it's serving a little bit of a need. And
Hmm.
there's and I'm just speaking my own experience. I'm not speaking about anyone else. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and so what we've done recently is we've changed our avatar. And this is 20 years into a legacy brand, right? We've
Yeah.
changed our avatar from a part-time person who wants to run it part-time and be in that lower 50% to someone who wants to be full-time. So
Mhm.
part-time effort equals part-time results, full-time
Right.
effort equals full-time results.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, so we want those people who are working full-time. Um, and so we had to go back and figure out, like, how do we make that happen? So what does it actually cost to onboard
Hmm.
a franchisee? And I'll just tell you what we came up with is
Please, yeah.
around 12 to 15,000. I'm sorry, not on board, to support.
Hmm.
12 to 15,000 for our brand. Maybe
Yeah.
for your brand it's $30,000 a year.
A
Maybe it's
year per. You're talking about how much you
per
budgeted
franchise per year.
perfect per franchise territory per year, right? Because
Yeah,
if they
per
own
franchise
three
territory.
territories,
Yes,
yeah.
per franchise territory per year. And we just looked at, what do we need now that we're 20 years in? We have this data that we can go back and look at. We know what we're spending now. Like, what is the bare minimum that it's going to cost the franchise support center to support one franchisee? And I think we came up between 12 and 15,000. And so then we're like, what do we do about that? Because we have this bottom quartile that's not anywhere close to paying that.
Yeah.
And we have to go through I know we're going long, but I
No,
have
no, this is perfect actually. But well, let me interrupt you for a second. I want you to
yeah,
finish your thought. But like the reason why this is so important is because most franchisors don't think this way, still don't.
I
And if
didn't.
yeah, I know, in 20 years in, but you do now because you learned from this mistake. Because
Right.
you're like, man, we're not making any money. Well, you have a promise. You've made a brand promise to anyone who buys your franchisee. And some of them are putting their house and their livelihood on the line for this. And if
Yep.
you can't fulfill your promise to your franchisees because you don't have enough money, you're unintentionally lying to people,
Yeah,
right?
and I didn't get that, but that's exactly what was happening. It's like, we're going to
Right,
support you. Oh, by the way, we don't have the money to support you.
right, right.
This happened to us. We grew too fast.
Mhm.
2009, the recession hit in 2008. We sold 30 franchises in 2009. I was like, we
Let's
have
go.
money. Yay. And then 2010 was the year of austerity because we
Uh-huh.
had no money. We were used to 2009 money, and
Hmm.
then we have no money because our franchise fees are 3%, and it takes, first year for one of our franchises, they might be doing $50,000, and we're getting 3% of that. So $1,500 is not anywhere close to 15,000.
Nope.
So you just have to take that into account and do some modeling. Get with a good CFO who can do some modeling for you. But the one thing I do want to share Tracy is the new CEO of Just Between Friends.
Mhm.
In her great leadership, we had to have the hard conversation with our franchisees recently that we are implementing minimum royalties, and we call it royalty responsibility. So back to Aaron Harper, I know you've had on your
Yeah.
podcast. He talks about franchising responsibly. And
Mhm.
this, we came up with this term for, royalty responsibility. Like, we're going to support you, but you have to do your part too.
Mhm.
And doing your part is year one, I don't know, $5,000, year two, 7,500, year three, you need to be paying into this.
Mhm.
And so we've, to me, I know lots of brands have minimum royalties. We've had minimum royalties, but they've been so low, they've not
Haven't moved the needle, right?
incentivized anybody to make a move, like get there or figure out something else.
Right.
And yeah, so I
Shannon,
don't know if that seems
that's
harsh, but
no, no, no. That's the reality because this is a partnership, right?
yeah,
It is harder to exit a franchising relationship than a marriage, right?
right. Have you
And
read this? Have you
I have not. Yeah, he's a
Profitable
great smart
Partnership?
guy.
Yeah,
It's
it's
true though, and it has to be a two-way street, like you're saying. And this is when we talk about money challenges. A lot of franchisees. I knew a brand that had almost 200 units, and if they didn't sell franchises, they were gonna have to go borrow money or go bankrupt, right?
yes,
That is a terrible situation.
right.
You should be focusing on royalty independence, where you don't have to rely on anything other than the royalties coming in through the system, which means your focus as a franchisor isn't on selling the next unit,
Right.
selling the next unit.
Royalty sufficiency. That's
Yes,
like the gold standard. Can we get to royalty sufficiency?
yeah. And how long did it take you guys to get there?
A long time. Like, I still am like, are we there?
Yeah,
But again, we're putting some of these things in place that have not been in place. Like I said, our new CEO, she's wonderful, and she's got a vision for the company to be a household name.
hmm
Um, and some of that requires some hard decisions.
hmm
And she's making those decisions for the future and the legacy of the brand.
right. And how
And
much easier would it have been if you guys thought this through properly and
yes,
didn't have to learn from experience and you set it up this way from the beginning?
right. Yeah, we would have, yeah, I mean, we would be wildly successful. So
Yeah. And guess what? Your journey's beautiful, though. I don't want to diminish that because the way that you've arrived at where you're at makes you so much more authentic, and approachable and
yeah,
humble.
learn from me, please.
Yeah, but that's why we do this. That's why we do this. So
Yeah,
I think you're sharing such good insights. Let's
yeah,
talk about. So we've talked about some money challenges like cash flow shortages and ways to avert that as making sure you have cash flow coming out of your corporate owned location. Don't get
right,
rid of them. I have a lot of people like, well, I want to get rid of all my corporate owned locations, and I say, if you can afford all of the cash flow, valleys, you don't have you're now totally sufficient on royalties every month, all the time.
right,
Then maybe, but at the same time, it's also your testing ground for new ideas. So don't throw it away.
right.
Um,
We had this, I have a mastermind group of women franchisors, and we met yesterday, and this was a topic of conversation because we have a couple in the group that do not have corporate locations, and then we have several in the group that have corporate locations. And then so the topic was, should we have corporate locations? Should we not have corporate locations? Should the corporate locations be paying royalties? And why should they be paying royalties? And
yeah.
so there's lots of conversation around that for sure.
Well, but you and I chatted about this before, but
Yep.
you're firmly in the camp of corporate locations should be paying royalties, and you kind of hinted at it before, but why? Like, why is that so important in not just cash flow, but in business model
Yep.
validation?
I don't know who gave me that advice so many years ago, but we owned our corporate location for I mean, before Devin and my co-founder and I reorganized the company in that year of austerity, the year after the year of austerity, we were like, okay, we are spending so much time on um our corporate location because it was cash flowing, it was doing amazing, and we're over here ignoring our franchisees. That was not what we should have been doing. We're like, we have to have focus. We have to have focus. And so that was the way we chose to focus. Is my co-founder took the corporate location as her 100% business, and I took the franchise system. So um, we tried to have some corporate locations. Our model is a little bit different. So anyway, did not work for us. Um, I think you're absolutely right. What we missed out on was a way to test
Mhm.
things. And so how we got around that was we asked franchisees to test things
Sure.
and gave them incentives to test things. And we have an innovation award where it's actually the Devon Tackett, my co-founder, it's named after her, the Devon Tackett Spark Scholarship, where you can apply to test things in your things that you come up with or things that we come up with, that if you want to try them in your location, and you get funds to be the testing ground
Mhm.
for the ideas. And
Right.
if it works, then we roll it out for everybody. If it doesn't work, I'm glad we tested it.
Yeah.
So
And thanks for your help, right?
yeah, thanks for your
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
But
Um,
you going back to the royalty side of it, the thing that I love about what you said previously, you're like, well, they need to be paying royalties out of the franchise HQ locations.
yep.
Reason being is that often we don't like our P&Ls or our vision of this is a great
Correct.
franchisable opportunity before you franchise or
But
introduce.
we're not looking at all the money that's coming out of the coffers before you see what your net profitability is. Yeah, that was, and plus, you know, the gal that I was talking to yesterday, she said, "Well, I own the corporate locations and I own the franchise, so it's just." It's all the same. We called it manipulating the money on the call yesterday. You're manipulating the money.
Yeah.
It's all your money as a founder.
Yes,
Probably,
but
but I think if you're going to get investments only, because that sometimes that happens. If you go get investments, they will give you an investment for the franchise piece,
mhm,
but you want to keep your little corporate, your big corporate location separate because you don't want them to have a piece of it. But
mhm.
they're going to expect that corporate location is paying. I think they'll expect that corporate location is paying royalties.
Yeah. And frankly, at the end of the day, if you're planning an exit, you want it to be
Yeah.
because that royalty is going to add to the coffer and the value of the business,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So let's
Exactly.
shift for a minute. We just have a couple minutes, and I would love to have you on again and pick your brain again, even about the same topics. I think
Sure.
we could go another hour on this.
Yeah.
But when there are two things I want to talk about. One is getting smart money, because we talked about, hey, you need money, and they're probably saying, if they're listening, like, what? Well, where do I get it? Like, what do you recommend? And we also want to talk about measurements of success. So let's talk about money first. Where are some good and bad places that you've experienced like money? You
Yeah.
talked about personal lines of credit, things like that, but please share a little bit
Yeah.
more.
So we bootstrapped both businesses. So that is that I'm like, I invested in myself. That was what I did. So I just thankfully my husband has had a very steady job the whole time we've been married, almost 34 years. And I told him when we had the advisory board kind of final meeting right before the big transaction happened,
Mhm.
I said, I want you to come with me because I want to honor you in front of my executive team and my advisory board because you've been working your tail off the whole time. That allows me to be an entrepreneur where sometimes I don't make a paycheck.
Right,
And but so we borrowed from ourselves to invest back into the business. And yes, I did have a payoff in the form of a transaction,
right.
but not everybody gets to exit like that. So I think friends and family, of course, is one. I've got one client who is trying to do a capital raise right now.
Mhm.
A lot of people in the franchising space are looking for partners. So they are looking for people who have intellectual capital as well as financial capital. They come in, they've been in the space for a while, maybe they've had an exit and they have funds ready to reinvest back into franchising, back into founders that they believe in and concepts that they love.
Mhm.
So there's lots of that happening. I think private equity is they're very active in franchising right now.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a way that so many brands have gone on to see huge growth because they're able to roll equity back in and have a second bite at the apple and
Mhm.
doing doing really well. So I think there's so much money, but they're very specific about who they want to invest in.
Hmm.
And so you're looking at, your average unit volume needs to be good. Your same store sales need to be continuing to grow. There needs to be a founder that's invested and still excited and not tired.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, there's all different kinds of ways to look for money. And I can't speak from experience. I can just speak from the experience of friends of mine that have gone through it. I
Yeah.
think it's very, very important for you to, they're doing their due diligence on you, believe me. And
Hmm.
it's a lift the skirt type of thing. They're looking at everything
Right.
before they're investing money in you. So you need to be prepared to be vulnerable, quite frankly. You need to be able to give them what they need to see what the white space is and if you don't know what white space is, like if you have 30 locations, how many, if you're just franchising domestically, how many locations can you put in the United States? Are you going to franchise in Canada? Are you going to do other international through master franchising? All kinds of ways to do that. But they want to know that, but you need to also be looking at them, like calling references, talking to their current partners that they're already working with, because a lot of these private equity companies are already working with other franchisors. And, I think there's platform companies also, like strategic partnerships that you can think about possibly joining. And I mean, there's lots of ways to get money, but you have to be prepared to
Right.
have a partner.
Yeah.
And when you're considering a partner, think about a marriage,
Hmm.
like honestly,
Yeah.
because you're going to be having the hard conversations about money. You're going to be mad at each other. You're going to think the other one isn't doing their part.
Hmm.
That is going to happen. It just adds another complexity to what is already hard.
Hmm.
But I think it's something that most of us need. We need money.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to do that.
I agree. When I think about the private equity partnerships, I advise people to think of it in two extremes.
Yeah.
As you're kind of dating, right? Figuring out, are you the right private equity group for us, or are you the right investment partner for us? I want you to think about them in two lights. One, the best light ever. You're wildly successful. Is that the other person you want on the other side of the table to experience that wild success with
Oh,
you?
that's good.
And
Yeah.
then the other extreme, if we are failing dismally, is that the right partner I want to cross the table from? Do they have the chops to take it? Are they going to give me advice and hold my hand and help me grow? Or are they going to say, pay me my money?
Right.
And there's room for both types of partners. I don't personally approve of or want to work with the one that's just like, I'm in this for money. If you can't pay me money, so I can keep fueling my yacht that's, in San Diego Harbor, I don't really care about you. Like, careful, careful who
Yes.
you get into business partnership
Right.
with. Don't be too eager for money. That
And
you're
and
going to make a
and
bad
that
decision.
money can it's the shiny object that's out there that's so tempting
Yeah.
that oftentimes we forgive a multitude of wrongs that we kind of see because, well, they're willing,
Yeah.
you know. So just know what you're getting yourself into. And there's lots
Agreed.
of great money out there. Like I mean,
100%.
there's
Yeah.
so many of my friends, franchise brands, they have, this is how they've grown and they wouldn't have been able to grow. And is it hard? Yes, it's
Hmm.
100% hard,
Yeah.
very hard. Just make sure that whatever terms you put in place with this investment, that you're not left the last getting paid.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um
Learn
and
what primaries and secondaries are. Yeah, please.
yeah, and that you have enough money to support. So I have a couple of friends who have taken on partners, and all of the franchise fees go to the partner,
Hmm. Oh, wow.
or even half of the franchise fees go to the partner.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, how are we gonna like, we
Hire the
need cash
people to
flow.
support
We're
yeah.
selling 30 franchises a year, or in some cases 100 franchises. When I see someone selling 100 franchises, I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah,
Like,
please help them. Yeah.
I'm
So,
like, oh man. I know some people have done it and been successful, but I think it's really, really hard.
mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, and maybe we wrap on that thought, Shannon, because there are people that are selling 100 units a year, and then 2 years from now they'll have 30 units active, and they'll be scrambling to sell as a fire sale to somebody because they screwed up.
yeah.
Because they gave up all their cash flow. They didn't have the people in place to support the 100 units they were selling a year, and it's a disaster. There are
Yes.
also very rare few that can sell 100 in a year and support them and make the franchisees successful. And I don't mind saying this because he's a good friend of mine and a client, but like Aaron Harper's doing that over at Rolling Suds, and everyone sees it. And then
Right.
I fear that a lot of people in the industry are like, that's the new standard. I should be just like Aaron. But nobody's just like Aaron except for Aaron. So
Yeah. That is 100% not typical.
100%. But he's doing it and he's doing it
Yeah.
well. But
Yeah.
what advice would you give an emerging or growing brand who's watching someone like an Aaron or even like Steve at Resi Brands and saying, I'm not selling out 50 units a quarter. What's happening? What's wrong with me? What would
Yeah.
you advise them?
I think you have to set an expectation for yourself. Um, and know that selling 50 units, that took a lot of capital to do that. And we don't have the end of Aaron's story, right? So
No.
he has a service-based brand,
Mhm.
doesn't take, you don't, there's no brick and mortar in that. And I think that's a difference too. If you have a service-based brand and you sell 100 units, that's very different than selling a brick and mortar location with 100 units because what is his startup? 90 days, 120 days,
Mhm.
at most 180 days startup.
Not that
So
much. It's like I
yeah,
think 60 to 90 days. Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, and he has a company called Rolling Suds. For those that don't know, it's a power washing, right?
Yeah, you're right.
I'm
100%. Yeah.
yeah. Conversely, someone who has a build out and takes 6 to 8 months. Well, first off, 6 months to find a location that they can afford, and then
Yeah.
6 to 8 months to build out. You're
Right.
selling these locations, and then sometimes they can't find a location. Real estate is so expensive, but you've sold this location and you can't get it open
Hmm.
because you
Yeah.
don't have the money coming in. So you don't have the people on the corporate team to support. Your
Right.
franchisees are sad because they bought a 3-pack and now they can't even cash flow their first location. So
Right.
it provides for I, there are so many great things about franchising, right? It's changed my life. It's changed the lives of my franchisees.
Hmm.
But there are also I want people to step into this industry with their eyes wide open. My husband, he's a pastor. He says expectation equals premeditated resentment.
That's so smart. That's such a
Yeah,
good statement.
yeah, because it's true. Like
Mhm.
as a franchisor, we expect I have I have a working location. I'm making $100,000 a year,
Mhm.
and I'm going to go give people the opportunity to do my XYZ model. And
Yeah.
then I step into franchising, and I think it's going to be easy because my model's amazing. I'm wonderful. My model's amazing. And I'm going to be able to I'm going to sell 25 in the first year. And
Mhm.
then you sell 5 and you're like, "Oh, what happened? Now I need to support these people and I have to figure out like why didn't I sell more?" And so it's just it's hard.
Yeah, it is
It's
hard,
hard.
but
Hard. It's
it's
doable. It's fun. It's challenging, but it's hard.
yeah, and it's less hard if you plan properly, capitalize properly,
Yes.
and have the right partners behind the capital so that you can go get more when and if you need it, and
Right.
they'll be happy to give it to you because they trust and believe in your model because you're executing well.
Yeah.
That's the secret of money, I think, is it's not the money, it's who's behind the money. That's what makes
Right.
the difference.
Yeah, yeah. This
Yeah.
has been so fun.
I agree, Shannon. I appreciate you making time to
Yeah.
join us and share insights and experience and vulnerability and lessons learned. Like, what a great guest. Thanks again for all the insights you shared with us.
Thank you for having me. It's fun. It's fun to talk about franchising.
Yeah. Hey, now, Shannon, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to find you? Is it a LinkedIn or an email?
LinkedIn. Absolutely LinkedIn. Shannon Wilburn on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Hey, thanks again, Shannon. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you.